Well. It's as we all expected. So they are going to be dividing up the characters with different episodes. For instance, we're going to have like RWBY type centered episodes, and then we're going to have, Weiss centered episodes, and now we're having like Yang / Blake centered episodes. I'm glad they're doing this. It's what I wanted from Volume 4. It's what I've been wanting, because this is a type of season that should focus on character development, and clearly that's what Rooster Teeth wants to do, because there's a lot of it in this episode. And to just start off, let's talk about the Yang stuff. Before I even get into the Blake stuff, let's talk about Yang. So Yang, as we all know, she is going through a hell of a lot. She's lost an arm, she's experiencing PTSD, which, damn, and just coming to terms with losing an arm and trying to operate without it, it's going to be a struggle. Now, the biggest thing was that she got a chance of a new arm. She got a robotic arm sent to her by Ironwood. And regardless of how Ironwood, he's kind of incompetent in some areas, I gotta give the man some props. He's a good man. He's a really good man sending Yang a robotic arm. He didn't ask for anything. He's like, you did a good job at Beacon. Here you go, and he gave her an arm. Now, at this time, though, Yang doesn't really completely accept it. She kind of pushes it aside for now, because she's not ready to accept the arm, because when she finally does accept it, I think that'll symbolize her character growth and how she is ready to continue moving forward. Right now, she needs to refine herself and figure out what she wants to do and accomplish in the future, because that's the development she needs to go with right now. But at this time, though, Yang and her interactions with the environment around her is what really stood out to me with this episode. And the big reason for it is when we know she lost an arm, and seeing her interact with certain objects, like trying to sweep and all that, you really notice the emphasis on her arm, because normally when you use a broom to sweep a porch, you use both hands. You sweep back and forth. But when you see Yang trying to sweep with one hand, you see the struggle of and the way the movement of her body is, you realize how awful this must be for her to get used to something like this. And it's not just the sweeping, grabbing mail as well, opening up a mailbox and then, getting the mail out and closing all that and having to put it right here. It really gets to you. You're like, damn, Yang is really going through a hell of a lot. And I noticed Rooster Teeth was really trying to emphasize the lack of her arm in a lot of these scenes earlier on in the episode. I mean, even the glass scene, before she freaked out and had a PTSD flashback, you had to where she dropped the glass, but you had it to where she was struggling with it. And I really like that. I really like how Rooster Teeth has gotten way better with showcasing emotion without audio, without, actually voice acting, anything like that. They can show it just with the movement of their characters, and that's something that not many animators, even in anime, can do. So I give mad props to Rooster Teeth for the effort they're putting into Yang's, body movements and the way she carries herself throughout this episode. But it doesn't just stop there, though. Yang, at this time, she just needs to find herself, though. She needs to finally find herself before she could finally accept the arm and continue moving forward. And that's pretty much all we get for Yang when it comes to this episode. The rest of it's Blake orientated. Now, as I've said many times, Blake is pretty much one of my favorite characters of RWBY. She's a great character. I love her design. I love the little, cat ears and stuff. It's great. And having an episode focused around her is instantly going to make this episode better for me. I'm going to enjoy that episode. And this episode focuses around her going on a journey, traveling. And she's trying to make her way back home. So she's on a boat, and she's all by herself. And there was a lot of emphasis on loneliness in this episode. And that's a big thing about this episode, one of the big driving themes. It was not just for Blake and her being lonely on this journey by herself, but it's also Yang, too. This message could also be applied to Yang, because nobody really understands what she's going through right now, or at the very least the people that are around her don't understand, because they have both arms, and you can't truly understand a person, understand what they're going through, unless you've been through it yourself. And if you have both arms, you don't know what the fuck they're going through. You don't know how they truly feel, and so Yang is very alone right now as well. So I like how that scene could be applied to Yang too, and not just Blake. So Blake, she's off on her own, doing her own thing. She's separated from everybody. She made sure everybody was okay, but she moved on and is now doing her own thing. But Sun realized this and decided to key in on it and then follow Blake on her journey, and he thought she was going to be going after the White Fang, which eventually she will, but at this time, though, she is going to her house, her home. She's going back home, and that's her journey right now, her destination. So, Sun and Blake are going to have their, interactions this season, and I'm looking forward to that. And, you know what? I ship these two. I ship Sun and Blake completely. I mean, these two characters, their interactions in this episode, it really makes me a big fan of them, and I definitely ship these two characters after what this episode displayed. I mean, I expect a lot of fan art. I expect a lot of Blake and a lot of Sun fan art with these two characters in the same picture because of this episode and because of this season of RWBY with them journeying together. So Sun is going to be with Blake. I'm glad she's not going to be by herself. I'm glad she has a fellow Faunus around with her, going to be able to journey with her and help her out. Just someone to talk to, because no matter how strong-willed you are, nobody should be alone. Nobody should be alone and have to go on a big, long journey by yourself. And so I'm glad, Blake has someone to, keep her company, talk with her, just share fun moments with her, sad moments with her, just all these different things she could share with him. And so I'm glad. I'm glad that Sun decided to, give her a hand, and he is following her and helping her out. Now, besides all of this, all these different things going on behind the scenes, let's talk about the action scene. So this is one of the big central points of this episode, besides the character development, and that is the fighting. Now, as we already know, the fighting is definitely not as good as it once was from the previous seasons of RWBY because of Monty. Monty was very good and skilled at making fighting scenes, and you still see throughout this, these certain fighting scenes, especially this fighting scene, this episode, where Rooster Teeth is still struggling to make a really good fighting scene. Now, I'm not saying this episode was bad. I'm not saying it was. I'm just saying you see where the quality is not as good. But regardless of how the fighting was done, in terms of the way the art looked, or the way the, the characters' models looked, absolutely beautiful. I am a big fan of the models and the way they look right now. I like the way, the Grimm, the Dragon Grimm, the water serpent creature, whatever title you want to give it. I like the design of the creature, and I like the way it was moving, but in terms of the way the fighting was going down, I saw things that just didn't look as good as the previous seasons of RWBY, which, Rooster Teeth still needs to figure out and try to better themselves, because, after Monty, it's going to be very hard to fill that man's shoes, because you're never probably going to be able to fill his shoes. So, we'll have to see how Rooster Teeth handles that. But for now, though, the fighting, it could have been a lot better. But, it's the best we're going to get for now, but still, it was pretty decent. I do, however, like how the clones were being used to kind of give themselves some boost in midair to attack the flying serpent. That was entertaining. That was some really good stuff. And it reminded me a lot of Final Fantasy VII Advent Children. I don't know how many of you have watched that movie. I don't know. But if you've ever watched Final Fantasy Advent Children, there was a scene with Bahamut when you saw that, the characters just slinging themselves up to kind of use themselves as pedestals to finally reach this monster in midair. And that's what this episode reminded me of. When you saw Blake and Sun using their clones and stuff to kind of propel themselves higher up, I was really entertained by that, and it reminded me of that movie. I don't know if Rooster Teeth took some form of inspiration from that movie, but I noticed that while watching this episode, and I'm like, yeah, that's a pretty good plus. I like this episode for that. But regardless of the fighting scene, though, we move into the final part I need to talk about, and that is the Salem stuff. So Salem, she talks to Cinder. And Cinder's character, as I've already said, she is quickly moving up to one of the characters I'm fascinated about because of what has happened to her in general and how she now is very weak and feeble. Salem asks a question. Is Ozpin dead? Is he dead? And judging by this convo, I'm going to assume Ozpin is not dead. I'm just going to assume he's going to come back. And what does this mean if Ozpin is alive? Well, this is a villain organization. We gotta remember that. And we also gotta remember Cinder at this time. She's not a person that's in a very good spot. She can't speak. She has her face burnt and ruined. And just overall, she's in a really bad situation. And usually in villain organizations, if they see someone that's a weak link, they're gonna cast you aside and kill you. That's how it works. It's not like, a heroes association to where if you lose a leg or an arm, they're going to help you, get you back up to speed, make sure you recover. They're not going to be like that. That's not how a villain organization's going to be. They're not going to try to help you out. So, if Cinder did not kill Ozpin, and if Ozpin does do some shit, and if he is alive, and start causing some havoc for Salem, that's going to be bad for Cinder. Cinder is going to be punished, and I could see Cinder possibly taking the bullet before the season is done, or maybe even having to run away. And I mean, don't even get me started with Mercury and Emerald and their interaction with the Grimm that they've saw in these previous episodes. I mean, their facial reactions speak enough. They don't even need to say anything for me to understand what they feel right now. Mercury and Emerald, the way they look at the Grimm, they look like they're absolutely terrified. And it really stuns me and makes me start questioning, like, why just now are they reacting like this? I mean, they knew who they were working for, but now they're acting so scared because of this, because of who they're working for, and also these Grimm popping up like that jellyfish-looking Grimm that was telling information to Salem. So Emerald and Mercury might be the main reason why there could be a downfall to Cinder maybe getting killed. Or maybe they could be the helpful hand for Cinder to get out of there. I could see Mercury and Emerald helping her out, getting her out of there if Salem is coming for her life. So overall, though, a lot of good, plot development in this episode, a good direction going on. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. You all have a wonderful day or night wherever you live. Please be safe. Chibi out.